Hi, it's John from Nursery, your coastal gardener. It is Leucadendron season. And if you're not familiar with Leucadendrons, they are a lovely category of plants that are native to South Africa. Actually, David, we were so quick, I need my cheat sheet. Can you hand me that pad of paper? I just want to make sure I cover everything because there's so much to talk about. So they're native to South Africa, so they like it high and dry. They do very well here on the coast, so it's kind of a interesting thing. The one thing I would say is that if you have an area in your garden that sits excessively wet in the winter, these guys are not going to like that. So they want to be high and dry. So, and when I say high and dry once established. So we need to clarify some things because people still seem to think that drought tolerant means you never water it. There are no plants that don't want water. So it's very important to kind of identify that. There are things that as they mature after that third year of being in the ground that don't want as much water. Here is the one exception. These little guys actually resent summer water once established. I'm going to repeat that. They resent summer water once established. That takes 3 to 5 years. So you're not going to pull back on water completely until probably the 4th or 5th year. Okay? The other thing with leucadendrons is they're deer resistant. So the deer hate them, which is great for us. They come in a range of sizes, shapes, colors. There's some of them that are relatively new hybrids, like this little guy that I keep handling. This is called Jester. I love this one. I have them in pots on my deck. A lot of my my kind of beautiful shrubby things that I have, I use as accents in pots on the deck because to me this looks like it's blooming year round. It's so very, very beautiful. So this is one. They just came out. Oh, wait. So let's talk about Jester for a second before I jump around. 5 to 8 feet tall and 6 to 10 feet wide. Now, that's in the ground, left alone. You guys can prune these things. The only thing is they resent being hard pruned. So you never want to take more than 25% off of the plant in one season. The other thing you want to remember is that this time of year, because primarily, sorry, my nose is tickling, primarily they are what we would call fall into spring bloomers. So they start to set their buds / cones this time of year. This is last year's flower, believe it or not. And it's kind of hard. I don't know if I can get this thing to open. They have a cone, but this one doesn't. You're going to make me a liar. But that's kind of what the flower structure ends up looking like. This is now branching with all of these little new flowers. And that's going to be this year's flowers coming up, okay? If you had this plant in the garden, you could actually, after it's done blooming, cut it back to about 12 or 14 inches below that main flower. They're going to branch out and grow about 12 to 14 inches each season. So each year they kind of traditionally from, this is a good example. This is where the flower was on this one last year. Right here where my finger is. That's where the cut is. And everything else up here is what grew this season. Okay? So this isn't even fully mature, but this is easily about 12 inches, and it could get taller before it's finished its growth spurt and then bloom. And so then next year, this is where those new stems are going to come from. So what you want to think about is if you want your shrub to hover at 4 feet, depending on what variety it is, You want to cut it back to 3 feet, usually about midsummer is when the flowers are kind of technically done, but they're never really done. They kind of hang out, which is really kind of neat, which is what this one is doing with this flower. So this will sit there and hang out until you cut it off. The other thing, it's really interesting. A lot of these plants that have been introduced in the last many years were actually originally introduced into the floral industry as cut flowers. And then the demand was created for them for garden plants. And so they've been working on collecting more and more of these leucadendrons and finding newer varieties. Some are patented. So is everything okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is Jester. Jester, I think, was a natural occurrence. This guy over here, sorry, I'm jumping around a lot. These guys excite me. This is called Leucadendron Wonderland. And this one actually is patented. So what they did, I believe, is they took Jester and crossed it with another variety to get this more green and yellow variation. It's really pretty with these red stems. It's gorgeous. But this is probably one of the first hybrids that have come out from this grouping of leucadendrons. This one says it gets 3 to 4 feet tall and as wide. Now, here's the thing. For most of you that live on the coast, you know that things here don't always do what the books say they're going to do. And so some of these plants can get quite tall given the opportunity. And so it may say 3 to 4 feet, but it might end up getting 4 to 5. So don't be surprised if that happens. I've seen it happen a lot, especially with the leucadendrons. So if you want it controlled in a controlled area, definitely stay on it as far as clipping and pruning and whatnot. So this one, again, is called Wonderland. It's really, really pretty. I don't have one of those on my deck yet. Poor David is probably dying inside thinking of adding another plant to the deck. So that's Jester. Here's another one of my favorites. This is Leucadendron Ebony. Actually, this is a patented one also. So the patented ones just mean that we as nursery growers can't do cuttings and produce and sell them, but you as a person could do it for your own garden. As long as you're not selling them, that's all the hiccup. This guy gets 5 to 6 feet tall and 4 to 6 feet wide. When it goes to flower per se, what happens is these will lighten up and get more reddish colored than this kind of almost blacky maroon. I have these in pots at home, again on my deck. They're relatively short, and I haven't seen a really fast growth rate on this guy. I think just because of the color of the foliage, it doesn't photosynthesize as quickly as the others do. So the rate of growth is much slower on these. But again, great cut flower. All of these make great accents in wreaths for Christmas time. And their bloom time is perfect for that because this is their going into their season. So that is Ebony. Let's see, this guy. This is Safari Gold Strike. And Safari Gold Strike is, I think, a sister. The parentage is Safari Sunset, which some of you guys are familiar with. Safari Sunset is, that's Wilson's Wonder. Where are you? Here it is. Okay, so here's Safari Sunset. Here's Safari Gold Strike. You can kind of see the coloration difference. One has more reddish tones, one has more golden tones. Okay, Safari Sunset 7 to 12 feet tall. Now, what's really interesting is when this was first introduced, the label used to read 4 to 5 feet tall. This is exactly what I'm talking about. As we grow things more and more and we let things do what they're supposed to do, we discover that, sometimes their growth rates are different. So don't always think that the tags are always right, because sometimes things grow differently. So that's Safari Sunset. This is Safari Gold Strike. And this one is going to have a similar height and size, 6 feet by 6 feet. And the flower structure is going to be more blonde coloration, and this one's going to be more reddish. And then the interesting thing, this is probably our #1 seller. Safari Sunset will transition from kind of a reddish color as it ages to kind of a blonde color like Safari Gold Strike. So just something to know. And let's see. This guy, Wilson's Wonder. This is another good one. It has a little bit, you can kind of see, it has a little bit more of a wide stance to it. 3 to 4 feet. I really think that's wrong. I would say I've seen these be at least 4 to 5 feet. So 4 to 5 feet high and wide. Again, controllable. It's all controllable. You just want to make sure you don't do any pruning late summer. You want to make sure it's like after they're done blooming, like late spring, early summer, to do any kind of pruning, because you want to leave it so that it starts to do its new growth for the next year, and you'll have that color that you want in that fall, winter, into spring season. Because right now they're just starting to color up and starting to set their flowers for the season ahead. So Wilson's Wonder, bigger than it says. And this one's a really pretty one. This one has a little bit more of a wispy look to it. This is called Red Tulip. This one says 5 feet tall, 6 feet wide. It is grown for its stylized red tulip-like flowers. Some of these descriptions crack me up. But this is kind of a perfect example of when we look at roses, we talk about roses being like a hybrid tea, which has a big flower. And then there's floribundas that have multiple flowers on a stem. This variety does that. So the flowers are not going to be as big, but there's going to be more of them on the stem, if that makes sense. So this plant, you can kind of see, Leucadendrons in general have kind of I don't always like using this term, but it works, a kind of Dr. Seuss-ish look. They kind of have this kind of irregular habit, and much to my chagrin, the growers don't always manage the pruning of them. This is actually the parent of all of these. This is Protea. This one is called Mini King. The other one we have is just called Pink Ice. So Mini King is a shorter variety. It's a hybrid off of Pink Ice. Pink Ice has those really, really large, they're like this, but they're kind of elongated flowers that have that really, really pretty pink inner, pale pink inner stamens. And then the outer petals are really, really long and almost fuzzy pink. They're really pretty. They do exceptionally well here on the coast. There's one in Casper. I haven't seen it in a few years, but I remember driving by and thinking, that's huge. It was probably it was at least to the roof line of the first story, so at least 8 to 10 feet. Huge, covered in blossoms. These make great cut flowers. So if you like cut flowers, or if you want to bring cut flowers into the house, or you just want to enjoy them outside, these are great plants. Mini King is, I want to say it's like 6 feet tall, but let me check. Yep, 6. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's the flowers are 6 to 8 inches across. This one says it gets 3 feet tall. I would probably say more on the 4-foot range. And again, this one is a perfect example. I'm not sure. You might be able to see it better this way. This stem on this flower is coming from here. And they just do a weird thing. So if this were my plant, what I would probably do is cut it back here so that it starts to branch out to fill this void that's happening. Unfortunately, the growers don't always, and I wish they would, do some strategic pruning on them. Sometimes they'll come in and it's almost like they're in a hanging basket. All these branches are hanging down, and that's not going to work in a garden because they're going to be running along the ground. So this is Mini King, and we do have quite a few of these in right now. I do this thing, it's called hoarding, and this time of year, the doors are closing for availability. So we just received our last order from Monterey Bay for the season. The next order we get won't be until probably February or March. And we're probably receiving the last order from Griggs for the same reason. They pretty much don't deliver up here in the winter. So this time of year, I kind of gather a lot of stuff for you guys so that we have stuff to sell you during the winter season. And I usually focus a lot on Leucadendrons and Proteas. So again, this is regular old pink ice, very big. This one doesn't have as weird a weird growth rate as the others do. You can kind of see it has a nice upward movement. So not too troublesome with pruning. Oh, fertilizers. Okay. All of a sudden my table's empty. It's so boring. Leucadendron, I just can't have nothing. Leucadendrons are what we call phosphorus sensitive. For those of you who aren't familiar with the fertilizer numbers, that middle number is phosphorus. And so I would say that anything above 10 in a fertilizer with the number 10 for that middle number, phosphorus, would probably be bad. What I've found is in the years that I've owned the nursery, I've always used Sure Start, no problem. In the beginning, I was even shy about using Sure Start, but I've had no problems with Sure Start, so that's a good one to use when planting. You can also use it as a follow-up fertilizer if you wanted to, scratched around the surface and watered in, or you can use the all-purpose. That's a good organic fertilizer. I think that's it. We talked about pruning. Full sun. These really require full sun to do what they need to do, so at least 4 hours of full sun. Be careful with planting them too close to the house, as they will reach. I've made that mistake before. So if they're under an eave and you have like an eastern exposure and that eastern sun, they're going to reach towards that. They're not very good about staying in their wheelhouse. So they want to be out in full sun, not shaded by a house, not shaded by a tree. I think that is it. All right. It's really, really beautiful the last many days. Please make sure that you are watering your babies because it has been very, very warm. Make sure you're watering yourself. And we look forward to seeing you at the nursery.